Welcome to the world of probiotic foods. This is Cultured Food Life with your host, Donna Schwenk.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me. On this podcast, we're going to be talking about sprouted flour, which I believe is better than regular flour, but I want to tell you why I believe that and why it's so important to eat sprouted grains or to use a culture like sourdough to make your bread. A lot of people don't know this, but I've been doing this for like 20 years, but I want to explain to you, it's gotten easier and easier to find sprouted flour. And what sprouted flour is, it's made by intentionally soaking and germinating grains. And then they dry them or dehydrate them at a certain temperature, and then they mill it into flour. And while I mostly, and this is the truth, I mostly make bread from sourdough cultures. That's my main thing that I do. Sometimes I will make sprouted breads, and I used to do it a lot more than I do now. But I like sourdough because I like the taste. I like how it ferments for a long period of time. But also using sprouted grains is very, very good too. And using a sourdough culture or using sprouted flour unlocks the nutrients. And I have to tell you that I make almost all my cookies, muffins, desserts, scones, breads that are quick breads. I almost always use sprouted flour. And I've done this for like 20 years. And I used to make my own sprouted flour for probably 10 years. And I can show you how to do that. It's easy to do, but it is a little bit time consuming, and you have to have some equipment, like you have to have a dehydrator to dehydrate your grains. But I have a recipe for that, and I'm going to link that in the description below so you know how to do it if you want to make your own sprouted flour. But now you can buy it at just about any health food store. A lot of grocery stores have it. I know Costco has it. There's just lots of places to get sprouted flour now. So it's very convenient. It's easy to use. And so I don't even sprout my own flour anymore. I buy it because it just saves me a lot of time. It's really a comfort to me that my family is getting all the nutrients from using a sprouted grain instead of using regular flours that have their minerals and vitamins locked up in the grain, and the phytic acid and the enzyme inhibitors that also can wreak havoc on your gut. And that's what most grains have in them. And one of the many reasons I started using sprouted grains, well, this is really the first reason I started using sprouted flour and sprouting my own grains, was either that or I was making sourdough breads, because my daughter Macy, many, many years ago, she had IBS, and she had really bad intestinal pain every time she ate anything, any kind of grain at all, especially, and other foods too. She started getting allergic to a lot of foods, which is what led me to find sprouted grains and sourdough breads. She had a lot of gas. She had a lot of bloating. She was pretty miserable every time she ate. And we'd gone to doctors, and they didn't know what was wrong with her. They suggested we might want to take out her gallbladder. And I was like, okay, back up. I mean, I'm not doing any kind of surgery just because you think that might be what's wrong. I want to know that that's what's wrong. And so I started doing my own research, and I found a wealth of information. And what I found was that Macy, when she started to change her diet and have a cultured food at every meal, she changed the type of grain she was using. We used sprouted flour, or we made sourdough breads. Her body healed. And that's kind of a long story. I can link that description below to tell you more about it. But she no longer is allergic to food. She doesn't have the pain, the gas, or the bloating. She got completely healed. And one of the many things that helped her tremendously was sprouted grains or sourdough breads. So here's the deal. Let me explain this to you. Sprouting a grain, which is basically soaking a grain in water for like a period of time, either 24 to 36 hours. When you do that, you soak it in water and then you dehydrate it. You drain it, and you drain off the water, and then you dehydrate it, and then you grind it into flour, because you do need a flour mill if you're going to make your own flour. But it also can reduce the gluten and make the grain more digestible. So gluten is one of the main proteins in grains, unless if you're using an ancient grain like einkorn flour, that grain has a different type of gluten. It still has gluten, but it's the one that doesn't cause people the same type of allergy that regular wheat flour does, because it's missing that geno that causes the pain in the gut. So if you're interested in that, I have a whole article about einkorn flour, which is another great way. You can even get sprouted einkorn flour, or you can make sourdough cultures with it. That's another great thing if you have gluten pain. But we didn't have that back then. We used just regular sprouted flour. And it really is interesting what happens when you use sprouted flour. It's impossible to remove all the gluten from the grain. But what sprouting does, it can reduce gluten. And many customers with starch or gluten intolerance have reported, just like my daughter Macy, that she was able to digest sprouted flours and sourdough products without any pain. And it usually just depends on how messed up your gut is and how allergic you are. And if you are very allergic, then I suggest, I have an article called Gluten Pain is Your Best Teacher. You need to fix your gut, maybe with cultured foods at every meal, which helps your gut lining to heal and helps your gut to heal. And I'll link that in the description below because there's a lot more information on that. But many, many people who do have gluten intolerance do very well on sourdough or sprouted grains. And they also have found that it can be low glycemic and diabetic friendly. And most people's bodies really struggle to digest grains. Yet those same bodies flourish with grains that have been sprouted or made with a sourdough culture. And that happened to my daughter. They're both considered low glycemic, which is a wonderful benefit of these basically fermented foods. And what's interesting is the pancreas needs huge amounts of B vitamins to deal with stress. Most people don't know that. But once a grain has been sprouted, most bodies recognize this as a vegetable rather than a starch, which requires digestive enzymes, not pancreatic enzymes. And therefore, eating sprouted grains does not stress the pancreas. Now, in 2008, the USDA Food Safety and Inspection Service ruled that sprouted grains are more akin to vegetables than to whole grains. And that's really interesting because that is really what we found too, that they really did digest differently when they were sprouted or used a sourdough culture to make the bread than they did when it was just regular wheat flour. Now, properly sprouted flour is diabetic friendly since it does digest differently than unsprouted grains. It doesn't require as much work from the pancreas, which for most patients with diabetes can be already stressed to begin with. But it's important that you guys note that everybody's different, and it's really important for you to test your blood sugar or monitor how it does after you eat sprouted grains because everybody's different. Everybody's got, different degrees of diabetes, or the people that have diabetes have different stressors on their body that can influence that. So it's important to test your blood sugar. Now, Phytic acid, which is known as a mineral blocker, is present in the bran, which is the coating on the nuts and seeds of all grains that you eat, and most nuts and seeds. And it inhibits the absorption of calcium, magnesium, iron, copper, and zinc. And this inhibitor can neutralize our own digestive enzymes, resulting in all kinds of digestive disorders experienced by people when they eat unsprouted grains. Yet phytic acid is broken down in the sprouting process, which is why sprouted flour is so good. So the complex sugars responsible for the intestinal gas that you get when you eat grains that aren't sprouted are broken down when you do sprout them and make that into flour. So in addition to the sprouting process, it produces changes in the composition of the grain in a lot of ways. It's really interesting. And it really makes it a more beneficial food. The process of sprouting produces vitamin C. It increases the content of vitamin B, vitamin B2, vitamin B5, and B6. And then carotene, which is converted to vitamin A, increases dramatically in sprouted grains, sometimes as much as 8-fold. So sprouting also inactivates aflatoxins, which are toxins produced by fungi and potential carcinogens found in grains. So sprouting can really help your body in so many different ways that's why I think it's so important to use either sprouted flour or sourdough breads or sourdough, different types of, you can make a million things with sourdough cultures to make all different kinds of foods that you eat. I just think it's important because not only does it increase the vitamins and minerals, it inhibits the the phthalates, which cause you to not absorb the nutrients that you need, and also to get rid of the toxins and fungi that can be in flour that's not sprouted. So let me tell you sourdough versus sprouted, which is better. So if I had to choose between sprouted bread and sourdough bread, I would choose sourdough bread. I still love sprouted breads. I've made them for many, many years. But I kind of quit a while back because I just love making sourdough bread. I love the taste. I love the long way that it ferments. I like long, slow overnight method to make my sourdough bread. And I'll give you that recipe if you'd like, because that is my favorite sourdough recipe. And it takes about 7 minutes to make it. I make it before I go to bed. I let it ferment all overnight. And then the next morning I bake it, and it's so good. And the longer that you let something ferment like that, the more benefits you're going to receive, because the longer fermentations break down the bread, make it even more digestible than it was, even if you only do it for a few hours, and the taste is unique and like nothing else. And also I want to tell you, sourdough deactivates enzyme inhibitors and phthalates just like sprouting does. It increases the bioavailability of nutrients. It increases the vitamins just like sprouting does, because it's basically doing the same thing. It's just imparting that sour flavor that I love so much, and I like the fact that I can let it go for a long time and give more benefits to the bread. Sourdough cultures are loaded with good bacteria and yeast too, and it just gives it such a good flavor. But here's the other thing. I don't use sprouted flour to make sourdough bread. You don't want to do that. That's one thing that's really, really important, because a lot of people have done that. The bread has already been broken down by the process of sprouting when you use sprouted flour. And the sourdough culture won't have what it needs to transform the bread. And it won't rise very high. And so don't use sprouted flour to make sourdough bread. You're not going to get more benefits. You're going to get less, and your bread's not going to turn out as well. So don't use that. That's an important note to make. Do one or the other to make your bread. So now, here's the deal. For yummy, quick baked goods, especially during the holidays, I always use sprouted flour to make cookies, to make muffins, pancakes, scones. Sometimes I take that back. Sometimes I make my pancakes with my sourdough culture. That's my favorite sourdough recipe. But every once in a while, I'll just use sprouted flour instead. It just depends on how busy I am. Sourdough takes a little bit more thought. I kind of let it ferment overnight and then make them in the morning. And so sprouted flours are a lot quicker. But I do make almost everything that's like cookies and muffins. I make cakes. I always use sprouted flour for that, because it's broken down. It's so good. And there's a lot of different types of sprouted flours that you can buy. I use spelt a lot because spelt has a really good flavor. I really like the way that it makes muffins and things like that. White wheat is really good for cookies. And even einkorn sprouted flour, you can buy that at some health food stores. That's fantastic. If you really want the most bang for your buck in sprouted flour, einkorn's the one to get. It's a little more expensive. It's harder to find. But I love the flavor of einkorn flour. And I use it all the time to make things that make just delicious desserts. But you can find all kinds of sprouted flours now. And I'll put a link in the description below, and you'll see it in the article. You'll see there's just dozens of different kinds of sprouted flours now that you can find. And they're easy, they're delicious to use, and they provide a lot of nutrients from your family. And I'm looking forward to the holidays because I'm wanting to make some pumpkin things, some pumpkin cookies and muffins. And, I love to make those as fall comes up. and I just use a lot of sprouted flour. And you'll see that in all my recipes that I use sprouted flour. And if you go to the grocery store, or especially in the health food stores, is where you're going to find the most different types of flour. And Costco has really large bags of it. They have some really good sprouted flours. And you'll see you can buy a big bag. I think sprouted flour lasts longer than regular flour. I think it's shelf life of 6 months or more. But I always keep mine in the freezer just to make it last even longer. But you can, actually it does, because it's been sprouted, it actually does last longer on your shelf than it would regular flour, because it's been sprouted. It's basically preserved the food in a wonderful way, so it stays fresh for a long time. I have a lot of recipes, and this month I have a special ebook for my Diabetic Pro members, and I made them. I think I've got over 30, maybe 35, 37, I can't remember now, sprouted recipes. And you can get that if you're a member. But I also have a lot of free recipes on my website. And if you're a Diabetic Pro, it's like $10 a month, and you can just sign up for 1 month. You get more benefits if you do 6 months or a year. You get a bigger discount. You get 10% off all your products. But if you just want to buy the book, it's basically just a $10 membership fee, and then you can cancel it if you don't want to continue it. But I have a lot of recipes in that book. But I also have a lot of free recipes. I actually tell you how to make sprouted flour on my website, and I will put all of these links, descriptions below, so you can find them all. I teach you how to make it. I have FAQs about sprouted flour, so if you have questions, you can look that up. I have a Donna's sprouted bread that I used to make for years, every week for my family. I did that for so many years, and then I kind of went to sourdough just because I love it. But that's one of my favorite recipes that I made almost every week. I have a strawberry sprouted scone recipe that is my daughter Macy's favorite. She used to have her girlfriends come over, and I always made those for girlfriends because it was so good. They're so delicious. I have a chocolate zucchini cake that's to die for, that's made with sprouted flour. I have zucchini pancakes, which are, oh gosh, I make those so much in the summertime. If you have a lot of zucchini, it's so good. Basically, you're shredding up zucchini, you're putting a little bit of sprouted flour in it with an egg, and then I put a little bit of goat cheese in the middle and then put spaghetti sauce over top of it. It is a fantastic summertime meal, or even a fall meal if you have a lot of zucchini. I actually make this all the time, so it's one of my family's favorite recipes. I have a strawberry kefir pie. The crust is made out of sprouted flour. That's a huge hit. I did I was on a PBS special with Brenda Watson, who does a lot on probiotics and stuff, and they had a bunch of people in. They had me on their show, and they served that strawberry kefir pie to everybody at the studio. It was like a bunch of people, and everybody loved that. That's a great one to make. It's really easy to make, and it's a lot of fun, and it's delicious. And then I have like a sprouted graham crackers that you are going to want to make. They are so crazy good. I have that made with sprouted flour. You'll love them. I constantly double and triple it when I make it, because I cannot keep them in the house if I make sprouted graham crackers, because everybody's eating them all day long and they're gone before I know it. And then I always use them to make like a graham cracker crust for a pie or something. And oh my gosh, I cannot keep those. If my family finds out I have those, they're gone. So I hide them from everybody so I can use them for recipes, especially in the fall. I like to make a lot of really fun recipes. So this is my take on sprouted flour. I talked a lot about sourdough too, but most of it is just because you're deactivating the enzyme inhibitors, you're increasing the nutrients, you're allowing better digestion, you're helping the gluten to be more digestible for you, and allowing your body to get, just it makes it easier on your body to digest these foods. But it also helps your body get the nutrients that you need that make up the cells of your body that make you healthy. And I learned this a long time ago when my daughter Macy was sick with IBS, which she no longer has. But I remember being so thankful that she could digest sprouted flour, because her diet was limited. She was allergic to a lot of foods. And that was just a godsend for her, because she could still have bread and it didn't wreak havoc on her like a lot of the other foods were. But in the meantime, her gut healed and now she can have just about anything. But it does make And also another good recipe is in my Diabetic Pro sprouted flour ebook is pizza. That is a great recipe in there for pizza dough. If you'd like to get that special ebook with, I think it's got over 35 recipes in it. So I love sprouted flour. These are just recipes that we use all the time. As a matter of fact, this weekend we made, I don't remember what it was, Sunday. I told my daughter, I said, let's make cookies. We haven't had cookies forever. Everybody was making all these holiday fall desserts and stuff. And so she just got out this recipe, and everybody wanted sugar cookies, which we use monk fruit in our sugar cookies, which taste fantastic. And we use sprouted flour, and it was so delicious. And I think the recipe's in my Diabetic Pro ebook, but we just loved them. Nobody could even tell that, first of all, they were sugar-free, and they were also, I think we put a little cinnamon sugar. Some of them were snickerdoodle on top, which was just basically cinnamon and monk fruit on top. It was so good. But we use sprouted flour. That's just what we have at our house. That's what we use. And in 2 days, those cookies were gone because they're so good and they're so fun and easy to make. And it's just a habit we've gotten into that. So we just always use sprouted flour. If you really want to get a bunch to cook with, Costco does have good prices on them, and they're nice because then you have a big bag and it's less expensive. And keep it in your freezer, keep it on the counter. It lasts 6 months, and you'll love it. So with the holidays coming up, just maybe switch your flour. Switch to sprouted flour this holiday season. See how you guys do. You can still make your favorite desserts and treats, and using sprouted flour, you can use just like you would regular flour. So if it calls for a cup of regular flour, just use a cup of sprouted flour, and it just goes across the board. It's easy to just substitute it one for one, and it really can make a big difference in how you feel, how you digest your food, but also when you want to treat, it's a great way to make a special dessert or special muffins or whatever you make for your family. Been doing it a long time. I love it. And that's why I have so many recipes. So head on over to my site. I'm going to put all the links below, and you can see all those free recipes, and you can learn to make your own sprouted flour if you want to, or, pick up some at the store. And I'm going to give you a link in there so that you can look at all the different types of sprouted flours you can buy. So thanks for listening, guys, and send me an email if you do find something, a recipe that you enjoy, and I'll share it with everybody. It always helps to have other people's ideas. I enjoy that so much, getting your recipes from you and sharing with people, because it's, everybody's so creative nowadays that it's so fun to see so many people baking and doing things to make just their lives more enjoyable. But there's nothing like cooking your own desserts. They're so much better for you. And if you use sprouted flour, it'll increase the nutrients and allow you to even get healthier foods in your family's diet. So have a good week, guys, and we'll see you next time.